Y'all, it's your boy Easy, and on today's episode of Easy Opens, we're going to be taking a look at the Neca Ultimate Sesame Street Ernie figure. Alright, so Ernie was created by Jim Henson and Don Solon. He first appeared on the first episode of Sesame Street in 1969. He is a human Muppet who lives with his best friend Bert in the basement apartment at 123 Sesame Street. Both of whom were created to teach children that people can be good friends with those who are very different from themselves. He is a comedian to Bert's straight man. He loves bubble baths, his rubber ducky, singing, and practical jokes. So the box art is great, the artwork is fantastic, and it's really cool, but we're not here to talk about that. Let's get this figure free from its plastic prison and see what we think about Ernie. Alright, so fresh out the box, I am just enamored with this. I absolutely love this. This thing looks fantastic. I mean, it is a little weird and jarring seeing like their feet because, you don't usually see their feet because the puppetry and everything. But once you kind of get past that, they're fantastic. I mean, it just looks like it walked right off the screen and into my hands. And yeah, I am very happy with this as a first impression. It feels good. It's got a nice solid feel to it and it's got some weight to it. And I'm just enamored with this. I mean, granted, a lot of it has to do with growing up with Sesame Street and the Muppets that like, I'm kind of like waiting for their mouth to move. Like that's how like realistic, within the sense of like, this is a Muppet and it's not a real thing, but you grow up seeing it talk to you and explain things to you your whole life. And then like, you hold a facsimile of it in your hand and you're like waiting for its mouth to open. And to be honest, as an action figure collector who has action figures with articulated jaws, I was kind of thinking that maybe they would have that. I mean, yes, they have an alternate head, which we'll talk about in a second with the open mouth, but there's something a little weird about that I'm trying to still wrap my head around, but that's not really a slight on the figure by any means. It's just a weird kind of like getting used to kind of thing. And that could just be me. But for what I'm holding in my hand right now, like I am very, very happy with this. It looks amazing. The sculpt on the clothing is great because there's like so many subtle wrinkles and folds on the shirt and in the pants that just catch the light and create shadows and just brings this figure to life. And then the different textures on the clothing is really cool and also helps to give it like more of a feel that this is something else, that it's not just a solid piece of plastic. Like there's just something more to it. Coupling all that with the paint, the character by design is meant to draw your eye and attract kids to keep their attention so that they'll, learn and pay attention. And so Neca did a great job replicating that here with this figure, but the fact that they went above and beyond on the shoes is what really sells this for me, because he's got some used Chuck Taylors. Well, from the top, they look like Chuck Taylors. From the side, they look like they might be Adidas, but one way or the other, he's got some worn shoes and they are just scuffed up and you would say dirty because I guess they're not clean, but they just look well worn and well loved. And that's just a thing that they didn't have to do. They could have just given him straight, clean shoes. And I don't think anyone would have complained. But the fact that they made him to where he's lived in these adds so much more dimension to this figure. And I absolutely love that and really appreciate that attention to detail. Ernie comes with 6 interchangeable hands, an open mouth head, a closed mouth head, a painting of him and Bert, his rubber ducky, and the letter C. All right, now let's take a look at the articulation you're going to get out of Ernie. So starting at the head, you have 360 at the neck, and I just popped his hair out. I didn't know that could happen, but yeah, there's that, just in case you were wondering. Oh, that kind of freaked me out a little bit. Let's put that back in there. And yeah, so if you need to do that, you can. He can look up a little bit. Not bad, not too much, but enough, I guess. And he can look down, not really that much at all. He's got a little bit of side to side. Actually, kind of have to force it a little bit, but it is there, but not much. And Yeah, so that's pretty much it for the neck head articulation. Moving on to the shoulders, his arms can go out that far, and he's got 360 at the shoulder as well. He has a elbow swivel that gives you 360 there. He's got a joint there, so you can do that. Then he's got 360 at the wrist, as well as a joint in there for some wrist action. The torso, he's got some movement in there. I don't know if you probably hear all that, but yeah, he can move around quite a bit, actually. I mean, more than I thought he would be able to. So he can get some side-to-side action. He can lean back a little bit, lean forward a little bit, but his shirt definitely impedes some of this. But I don't know how much you need to have him do all that. But, you know, as far as like the buck of what's here, he has that there. So your mileage may vary with that, but he does have some workings under the shirt. He's got 360 at the waist, and then he's got a pretty decent split range, which is cool, I guess. He has a thigh swivel. I think you can see that. There you go. He's got a thigh swivel as well as a joint in there, a ball joint. He's got a knee swivel, just like in the elbow, as well as a joint in there. His legs can go out, you know, pretty good, and back a little bit, not too much, but just enough. And then he has an ankle rocker and a joint in there as well, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, and speaking of not being mistaken, I do believe that is all the articulation you're going to get out of Ernie. So I couldn't really find any accurate information about the height and weight of the Sesame Street characters, with the exception of Big Bird, who I believe is listed to be 8 feet 2 inches tall. That being said, I think that Bert is probably around 6 feet tall, and Ernie is shorter than him, so I would say he's around 5.5 feet tall, maybe. So take that with a grain of salt. But this figure stands to the top of his hair, is about 6 inches tall, and weighs around 6 ounces. So now let's take a look and see how he measures up to some other figures you might have in your collection. Here he is with the Neca Mirage Comics knockoff colored bandana Raphael and the Neca Return to New York Leonardo. Here he is with Jada Toys Street Fighter DJ and Jada Toys Mega Man Cutman. Here he is with Hasbro's Marvel Legends Spider-Man and Figma's Samus. Here he is with Jazzware's Fortnite Beef Boss and Mattel's new Eternius Skeletor. Here he is with SH Figuarts Senkocho Seiho Kamen Rider Kuga and Mattel's Masters of the Universe Classics Cobra Khan. Here he is with NECA's Alf and McFarlane's DC Multiverse Corrupted Superman. Here he is with NECA's Sesame Street Bert and Count Von Count. Here he is with the Palisades Adventure Kermit. And here he is with the DC Direct Arkham Asylum Killer Croc and Marvel Select Hulk. So I consider myself to be a pretty big Muppet fan. And out of all of the Sesame Street Muppets, Ernie is one of my favorites. Probably because I feel like we share a similar chaotic energy, if you will, especially in comparison to our best friends. And so I was ecstatic when NECA announced they were going to start making figures from Sesame Street. In typical NECA fashion, I think they did a great job, especially nailing the likeness of these characters, and Ernie is no exception. I think they got the look and the expression out of the two faces that they include are just perfect. Now, granted, I get that they're Muppets, and so they can. There's only so many expressions that they can get with just their, open mouth, closed mouth. I don't know. I still feel like it's sufficient. Like there's plenty there, and I love the open mouth look on Ernie. I just think it encapsulates the entire character, and I think they did a great job with it. His clothes are really cool. I think I mentioned earlier that the folds and everything just make it pop and come to life. And It's really rad. It took me a little getting used to the fact that the articulation is entirely covered up in the torso part of the figure. Whereas with the Ninja Turtle figures, it's the front and back shell usually. That's kind of mostly what you're dealing with. And you can see the articulation on the sides. Something about that, I don't know, I felt like mentioning it, that might be a thing if you're not used to it. But if you collect their other movie lines, chances are you're well versed in this. But for me, someone who's mostly a Ninja Turtle collector from Neca, like that's kind of a weird thing for some reason for me. But you quickly get past it. It's not a big deal. And then once you start getting used to the figure and how the articulation works with it, he's a lot of fun to pose and move around. And I really enjoyed all my time getting him in different poses and taking pictures with him. So a lot of fun there. So one thing that I found very interesting about these figures was this thing that was in the back of my head, because I'm always wondering about how this figure is going to work with other figures in my collection. And you're probably going to hear me say this on all my reviews for these figures, but the thing about Sesame Street and the Muppet Show and all that was the fact that they blur the line of like mixing live action humans with these Muppets and these, for all intents and purposes, cartoon characters, and just doing it effortlessly like it's nothing. And I think that translates, at least in my mind, because I had the exposure of it. I'm not sure if like somebody who's never seen Sesame Street or a Muppet Show or anything like that can have the same experience. But as far as those of us who have a general understanding of the shows and like what they involved, I don't think you're going to have any issue putting these characters with a variety of other characters from different lines, especially if you have some of the NECA live action movie characters from different lines. I think those will go extremely well together with these Sesame Street characters. And then Marvel Legends works really well with it too. So like, there's a variety of things you can do. And I think almost all of them will work. There's probably some exceptions that like some extreme like looking characters might not work. You might have to fudge it a little bit here and there. But as far as like live action human looking characters, I think you'll have a really easy time doing it. And I think that some of the comic characters will also work very easily. But again, your mileage may vary, but I wasn't quite expecting them to work as well as what they did, at least in my opinion, with some of the other lines. And I just really dig that and really has me excited about the rest of this line coming out. So there's that. Oh, I almost forgot to talk about the accessories. So love that he comes with all of his extra hands. That's really cool. And I love the little accessories like the picture frame and stuff like that. That's awesome. Really dig the rubber ducky. I mean, you got to have, if you're going to have Ernie, you got to have the rubber ducky. And then the letter C with the eyes on it. That's awesome. So what I've been doing is I've been putting the different letters that come with these figures, setting them up in just different areas, almost making it look like whatever action scene that I have is just an episode of Sesame Street where these other characters are just hanging out, and maybe they're hanging out with Pokemon, maybe they're hanging out with Spider-Man, like, I don't know. But it's just really kind of neat, and it makes for like a really awesome, I don't know how to say it. It just makes the scenery change, and it, like I said, I guess it just makes it look like you're on an episode of Sesame Street. And maybe that's just the power of these figures, how they can transform whatever scenario they're in just based on them being themselves. And for those of us who grew up on it, like somehow that just like recontextualizes everything, and you can get a lot of mileage out of that, in my opinion. And I really dig that. So I absolutely love all the accessories they came with, and really dig that a lot, especially the alphabet characters. So that all being said, my only big gripe with these figures is that the heads were very difficult to put on. So if you're going to try to switch from the neutral pose to the open mouth head, you got to be very careful where you're applying the pressure, because the open mouth gap doesn't have really any support in there to support you pushing down on the head to get it to snap into the joint. And so I had a lot of difficulty with that, but once I got it in, it was fine. But now I'm kind of also apprehensive to switch it out. But thankfully, I think the open mouth look is pretty good for most of the things I would want to do with these characters in general. So, once you do that, you're good, but just keep that in mind. You want to be very careful when you're switching heads with these figures, especially the open mouth head. But yeah, other than that, huge fan of this line. Really excited about these figures. Love this one and can't wait to have a whole shelf basically of Sesame Street. And I hope one day they'll be able to get the Muppets license, and then yeah, I'm all in on that as well if they're anything as cool as this Ernie figure. So if you're a collector of Muppet figures, this is a must-have. You can't go wrong here. If you've got Bert from this line, then you're a crazy person if you think you can separate these two roommates. So you need to just go ahead and get him. If you've got a shelf dedicated to lovers of yellow ducks, Ernie will certainly fit in there. Or if you collect well-meaning, good-natured agents of chaos, then you will not be disappointed with NECA's Ernie. All right, well, that's going to do it for me today. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, hit the like button. If you want to see more from me, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments, what's your favorite Muppet? What's your favorite gag that Ernie's pulled on Bert? And then what letter do you hope they come out with next in this line? And until then, else time.